Chapter 646. If Njord only loathed Rog before, and hated him for teaming up with Gulweg. But now, he really wanted nothing more than to grind Rog's bones to dust. In his own kingdom, in front of 300,000 Warner Protoss, he actually dared to boast that he would kill him in 3 moves. This was no longer a matter of provocation, but that he didn't even put him in his eyes. For a moment, Njord's body surged with an intense killing intent. Under the influence of his divine power, the originally endless blue sky suddenly became as gloomy as ink. Oh, he's actually angry. Looking up at the instant change in the sky, Rog still maintained his initial calmness. That's right, Njord was indeed the Divine King, the so-called Divine Father. But after browsing through the detailed information provided by Gulweg, he finally understood why he instinctively suspected that Njord hadn't reached the Divine Father level. The reason was very simple, because Njord's Divine Father level strength wasn't cultivated by himself. The reason why Njord could become the Divine King was purely because he inherited the authority left behind by the previous Divine King. Thus, he was promoted to the Divine Father level and became the Divine King of Warner Protoss. To put it simply, Njord's Divine Father level strength was obtained through cheating. This was also why Odin and Njord were both Divine Fathers, but the pressure Rog felt from the two of them were completely different. If he challenged Odin, Rog would feel that he was courting death. But if he challenged Njord, he felt that he could still do it. Yes, it was just okay, and it wasn't to the point where he could win for sure. The reason why he dared to boast of killing Njord in 3 moves in public was very simple, because he didn't intend to talk about martial virtues with Njord this time. Rog would have to be crazy to talk about martial virtues with a divine king who had lived for God knows how many millennia. Moreover, this was in his own country. So, he picked out one of his 3 infinity stones and silently carried it with him. He did not choose the reality gem that he had for the longest time, nor did he choose the soul gem that he obtained last. Instead, he chose the power gem that has a very high compatibility with Thanos. A few days ago, he had secretly tested his compatibility with the power gem. In the end, he found that it wasn't too bad. To be precise, it was even more compatible than the gem in reality. This could also be because the power gem approved of his fighting style. Although Njord was filled with killing intent towards Rog right now, he was still a god king after all. He could not attack Rog first. Sometimes, people were just so hypocritical. He clearly wanted to skin the other party alive, but he still forced himself to maintain this so-called attitude. Njord had to maintain his so-called dignity as the Divine King, but Rog had no such concerns. He suddenly put his hands together and silently chanted. Sage mode. In an instant, an astonishing amount of natural energy was absorbed into his body and mixed with his own chakra to form the immortal technique chakra. At the moment when red lines started to appear on his eyes and forehead, he immediately used the strongest move of the would escape technique. Immortal technique would release thousands of hands Buddha on top. In the beginning, there were still some Warner Protoss people who didn't understand why such a huge ring was built. Now, however, everyone understood the reason. When this incomparably large Buddha statue emerged from the ground, the originally incomparably wide arena instantly became insignificant. It wasn't just the ring that was affected. Even the spectator area outside the isolation belt was affected. This was also because Rog deliberately controlled the size of the Buddha statue in consideration of the environment. Otherwise, he could have created an amazing Buddha statue with a base diameter of more than 10 kilometers. Instead of just making a Buddha statue with a base diameter of less than 2 kilometers like now. But whether it was 2 kilometers or 10 kilometers, for Warner Protoss people whose average height was less than 2 meters, it was equally shocking. Seeing this terrifying Buddha statue that took only 1 or 2 seconds to form, the audience finally understood why Rog dared to challenge Njord in Warnerheim. People who could display this kind of move, in their view, were no different from the real Divine King. Not only were the audience shocked by the Buddha statue, but even Njord also showed an expression of disbelief. He couldn't understand how Rog, who could barely fight with him a few years ago, could grow to this point in such a short time. How did he do it in just a few years? Warner Protoss people, who had an average lifespan of thousands of years, obviously had a different concept of time than Earthlings. Not to mention that they had such a long lifespan, even Earthlings with an average lifespan of less than 100 meters couldn't understand. After summoning the Buddha statue, Rog didn't immediately control the Buddha statue to attack. Instead, he took out the power gem that emitted a faint purple light from his shirt pocket and held it tightly in his right hand. The power gem that ordinary people couldn't touch directly didn't cause any damage to him. If a 100% sage body and sage mode couldn't be recognized by the power gem, then not many people in the world could use the power gem. Looking at Njord, who didn't have any intention of leaving or hiding in the wreckage of the ring, Rog's face showed a smile. Njord lost. Although he didn't control the Buddha statue to attack, he was already sure that Njord lost. He just said in front of everyone that if he couldn't kill Njord in 3 moves, he would kill himself. It was actually a psychological tactic. He wanted to kill Njord in 3 moves. People who heard this sentence would first think that his 3rd move was the most powerful and terrifying attack. But in fact, he would directly use his most powerful attack in the 1st move and solve all problems in 1 move. The reason why he said 3 moves was to mislead Njord. And it turned out that his misdirection was effective. Njord, who was riding the huge saber-toothed tiger, didn't have any intention of dodging or leaving. Obviously, he planned to take his 1st move and calculate how powerful his remaining 2 moves would be. But Njord didn't expect that in Rog's plan, the remaining 2 moves didn't exist at all. 1 move, life and death. Under his control, the power gem's energy poured into the Buddha statue, making the originally green Buddha statue shine with a purple light. Looking at the purple light that suddenly appeared on the Buddha statue, Gulwig suddenly remembered something. But at this time, Rog controlled the Buddha statue to attack. Buddha on top. Rog put his palms together again and placed the power gem between his palms. Then, the fist behind the Buddha statue came to life in an instant, smashing toward Njord with the power to destroy heaven and earth. When the first fist of the Buddha statue arrived in front of Njord, Njord raised the golden trident in his hand. A pale blue hemispherical energy barrier completely enveloped him. Boom! A terrifying explosion rang out. The blue light and purple light mixed together, forming a dazzling ball of light. Before the sound of the explosion could reach the ears of the surrounding audience, the Buddha statue's 2nd fist came crashing down. Then the 3rd, the 4th, the 5th, in the beginning, one could still see the blue light formed by Njord's divine power. However, after the 20th punch, the blue light completely disappeared and was replaced by purple and golden explosive light. Yula 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 yula. Although the Buddha statue's body gave people a feeling of incomparable clumsiness, the speed of the Buddha statue's punches was far beyond people's imagination. It had even reached the limit of what the naked eye could capture. The audience thought that they would be able to see a hearty battle, but they never imagined that they would see a one-sided beating. Terrifying explosions rang out continuously, and the shockwaves of the explosions swept out like a tsunami. The earth began to crack, and the continuous violent tremors continued. At this moment, the rapidly punching Buddha statue became the most eye-catching existence in the entire world. The earth wailed, the mountains trembled, and the sky mourned. This doomsday-like scene only lasted for a little more than a minute before it came to an end. In this minute, Rog unleashed all the thousands of punches behind the Buddha statue, not leaving a single one behind. In order to ensure that every punch had enough power, he not only crazily consumed the chakra in his body, but also constantly urged the power gem to provide energy. While he was activating the power of the power gem, a voice that sounded like the ravings of a devil kept appearing in his mind. Smash the world with 1 punch. Smash the world with 1 punch. Smash the world with 1 punch. The power gem certainly had the ability to destroy a world with 1 blow. But the problem was that Rog's physique couldn't withstand such an energy output. The achievement of destroying a world with 1 punch was indeed tempting, but he didn't want to become like Thanos, who was unable to resist the backlash of the power gem. Under the temptation of this demonic raving-like voice, he always maintained his initial rationality and did not let the energy provided by the power gem exceed the limit that he and the Buddha statue could withstand. When the Buddha statue stopped attacking, he didn't hesitate and directly threw the power gem in his palm into the summon scroll, and then deactivated Sage mode. As time passed, the smoke and dust raised by the explosion gradually dissipated. When everything returned to normal, the audience, who had come to watch a good show but had almost been killed by the attack, saw the scene in front of them clearly. The Buddha statue with the amazing size was still standing in front of them like a mountain peak. But compared to when it first appeared, the fists behind the Buddha statue had all disappeared. In front of the Buddha statue was a deep pit with a diameter of several kilometers and a depth of hundreds of meters. There was no gravel in the deep pit, nor was there any living thing. Njord, who was supposed to be standing in front of the Buddha statue, had completely disappeared. Instead, there was a fist-sized light blue crystal floating quietly in the center of the deep pit. This light blue crystal was none other than Njord's origin energy. Or rather, it was his God King's authority. Under the attack of the Buddha above the top, Njord didn't even have the chance to self-destruct and was completely killed by the Buddha above the top integrated with the power gem's energy. Apart from the God King's authority, Njord didn't leave anything behind. Not even his bones were left. It was finally over. Glancing at the God King's authority floating quietly in the center of the deep pit, Rog stretched out his right hand and used 10,000 mammoth heavens pull, sucking the God King's authority into his hand. This battle was not a loss. Although the God King's authority was Njord's origin energy, Rog wasn't sure if he could make Njord leave the God King's authority behind. This was a matter of luck to begin with. If killing a God King could give him a God King's authority, then the God Kings of this world would be too insecure. After throwing the fist-sized God King's authority into the medium scroll, Rog turned his head and looked around. Although Gerweg had prepared a large enough arena for him, it was clear that Gerweg had underestimated his strength. A 1-kilometer diameter arena wasn't enough for him to unleash his full potential. Apart from Njord being killed by the Buddha above the top, the spectators on the opposite side of the Buddha statue also suffered heavy casualties. When the Buddha statue appeared, the spectators outside the isolation zone silently retreated a distance. However, it was clear that they didn't retreat far enough. Rog didn't know how many spectators died from the attack, but judging from the deep pit in front of him that was several kilometers in diameter, the number of spectators who died wasn't small. However, this had nothing to do with him. It was all because Gerweg's arrangements weren't appropriate enough. And these spectators obviously forgot a very important thing, that is, the battle between the strong wasn't something that everyone was qualified to watch. Sometimes, watching the fun also comes with a price. The battle between the 4th Hokage Rog and the God King Njord ended in a way that no one expected. After the death of Njord, Gerweg succeeded as the God King and issued a series of decrees. Although there were many of these God King decrees, they could be summed up in a few words. They were all militaristic and fighting to the death. After the battle with Njord, Rog didn't directly return to the royal city, but rested for a few days in the manor on the outskirts. After spending a few days with Hinata, which everyone was very satisfied with, he returned to the royal city alone, then took Gerweg's order and walked into the library that only the members of the Warner Protoss royal family could enter. Although he asked Gerweg for a month's browsing permission, Rog didn't stay in the library for a month. After the attendant told him that Gerweg agreed to let him take away a copy of any book in the library, he did not stand on ceremony with Gerweg and took away all the copies of the books in the royal library in one fell swoop. As a result, he didn't spend much time in the library. In total, he spent less than 5 days in the library. Chapter 647. After taking away all the copies of the books from the Warner Protoss Royal Library, Rog left the capital with Hinata and Fenrir. Although no one from Warner Protoss dared to express dissatisfaction in front of him, and even the people he met on the street were respectful to him. But he still lost the intention to stay in the capital to play. Traveling was always like that. Before you come, you always feel that the destination is full of scenery. But as long as you go to the destination or stay for a while, you will feel that this place is just like that. This is how Rog feels now. So after getting the reward he deserved, he directly left with Hinata and Fenrir. As for the elf girl Rosie who was auctioned by him, she was sent back to Konoha in advance. If it was calculated based on the length of the journey, Kuroto and Hinata's journey was already over. However, before returning to Konoha, he still had a small matter to deal with, that is, the abnormality after Fenrir swallowed the Black Panther god Batet. In Fenrir's head, there is still a hexagonal crystal that is neither a godhead nor an energy core. As Fenrir's master, he needs to help Fenrir solve this problem before returning to Konoha. After all, this is also the obligation of a poop picker. Less than half a day after leaving the capital, Rog confirmed the location of Hel, the goddess of death, and used the portal magic to directly come to Hel's army camp. At this time, Hel was in the camp of the main army composed of frost giants and flame giants. Only when Hel was the commander of the army, frost giants and flame giants, two races with completely different energy attributes, could peacefully coexist in the same camp. The appearance of the golden light portal immediately attracted the attention of frost giants and flame giants. But before they had time to surround it, they saw Fenrir coming out of the portal. As well as Rog and Hinata, who were sitting on Fenrir's back. Although the flame giants didn't know Fenrir, they recognized Rog sitting on Fenrir's back. This is the fierce person who killed their former king. Rog did not care about these frost giants and flame giants, and directly drove Fenrir toward Hila's main tent. Just as Fenrir was about to reach Hila's main tent, Hila, who was wearing a dark green battle suit, walked out of the tent. "It really is you. What is it this time?" Hila looked up at Fenrir and Hinata, then said to Rog. "Fenrir has a small problem now. I'm not sure what's going on, and I don't have a solution. So, if you don't mind, I hope you can help me take a look." After that, Rog let Fenrir lie down and pointed at Fenrir's head. I fed him a small piece of divinity, and then a strange crystal appeared in his brain. Rog explained the ins and outs of the matter. "Godhead? Ha 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 ha. As expected of you. Only you can do such a thing. Ha 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 ha." After hearing Rog's words, Hila laughed without restraint. She laughed like a queen. After laughing at Rog, Hila pointed to Hinata standing behind him and said, "Who is she to you? Girlfriend or wife?" Rog did not expect Hila to ask this question. He, who had been trained by Hinata to have a desire to survive, did not even think about it and directly said, "Her name is Hinata, now girlfriend, wife in the future." "Oh. You have good taste, and so does she." After that, Hila took back her gaze from Hinata and went straight to Fenrir. Seeing his former master come to him, Fenrir wanted to express his enthusiasm. However, when he saw Rog beside him, he decisively dismissed the thought. He laid on the ground without moving, not daring to show any signs of intimacy. Hila raised her right hand and gently stroked Fenrir's head, then controlled the divine power of death to surge into Fenrir's head. Hila's perception lasted for more than a minute before it ended. After retracting her right hand, she slowly said, "Fenrir is not much of a problem. It's just that his current body can't support him to condense his own godhead. Fenrir was resurrected by you. You should know that Fenrir is not a complete life, and his soul is still in an incomplete state. If I'm not wrong, you should have reached some cooperation with the Lord of Hell, Mephisto, and used part of Mephisto's power to finally resurrect Fenrir. Normally, there is no problem with this method of resurrection, but the Fenrir resurrected in this way is not a complete Fenrir. But you don't have the divine power of death, so it's normal that you can't notice this." Hila explained Fenrir's current state. Although she did not say it, Rog could already see that Hila had a way to repair Fenrir's soul. "What do you want?" Rog said directly. "Do you still have the godhead fragment that Fenrir swallowed? If you do, I want that godhead fragment. If you don't, then you can only follow my army for a while." Hila said the reward she needed. For her who has almost touched the threshold of Divine Father, although the godhead fragment of the Black Panther god Batet is not particularly useful, it is still a good reward. "I just have one more." After saying that, Rog used the psychic technique to summon the remaining godhead fragment. After receiving the godhead fragment from Rog, Hila suddenly raised her eyebrows and continued, "I heard that you killed Njord a few days ago and got his godhead authority. This can't be given to you, I have use for myself." Although Njord's godhead authority is inconsistent with his ninja path, it is still an extremely rare and precious item. More importantly, the Godhead authority can allow him to further enhance his physique and strength after eating the chakra fruit. Therefore, Njord's Godhead authority, he will not give it to Hela no matter what. Njord himself inherited the authority of the previous Godhead, so he took the crucial step and was promoted to the Godhead. If he gives Njord's Godhead authority to Hela, he can guarantee that in a few days, Hela will become the Godhead, the so-called Divine Father. I'm just asking, I don't plan to take it. Although I don't have much contact with this old woman, I know that she is a very scheming woman. You took away Njord's Godhead authority, you have to be more careful yourself, that old woman is not as simple as you think. Hela glanced at Rog and said slowly. Thank you, I will be careful. Well, there is nothing else. Fenrir will stay with me for a while, about a month or so on Earth, you can come and pick him up then. No problem, thank you for your hard work. After patting Fenrir, who still hadn't reacted, Roger left with Hinata and opened the portal back to Konoha's hidden village. Rog is not worried that Fenrir will not want to return to his side after staying with Hela for a month. To some extent, Fenrir is a wolf with good morals, he will not make unwise choices that endanger his life. More importantly, Hela will not rob him of Fenrir. If Hela wants to get Fenrir back, she has a more effective way. For example, consuming one of Rog's 3 promises. Compared with when he left, Konoha's hidden village has not changed much. The infrastructure and expansion work that should be carried out is still continuing, and the interstellar trade that should be carried out is also constantly being carried out. In other words, whether Rog is in Konoha's hidden village or not, it will not have any impact on the development of Konoha's hidden village. Of course, when Konoha is invaded by a powerful foreign enemy, Rog, the 4th Hokage, can play a role. After returning to Konoha's hidden village, Hinata just returned to the Hokage's mansion to change her clothes, and then went to the Hokage building with Roki, who was sent back in advance. Hinata took her new personal assistant Roki to the Hokage building, while Rog went alone to the lush forest outside Konoha's hidden village. With the various plants provided by Igo, the planet Tatooine has been completely restored. Just by looking at the current environment of Tatooine, it is completely impossible to imagine that it was a desert a few years ago. This is my planet. Rog himself didn't expect that after coming to this world, he would have a planet that completely belongs to him. This is more than a difference for him who almost couldn't afford to pay the rent before. After calming down, he summoned the silver surfboard of the Silver Shadowman. Because he wanted to challenge Njord, he didn't study this surfboard seriously. After returning to his own territory, he finally had time to satisfy some of his little curiosity. However, he didn't expect that his research on the silver surfboard would take more than half a month. The location of the research was also moved from the forest outside the village to the laboratory in the village. After more than half a month of research, he can basically be sure that the former owner of the surfboard, the Silver Shadowman, is not dead, but he doesn't know where he fell. In addition, through the study of the cosmic energy on the surfboard, he found a way to devour all the energy of a planet in just 2 or 3 days. How to say it, this method of devouring is very similar to Uncle Devourer. Unlike his Sage mode, which only integrates natural energy, the method of devouring energy developed on the surfboard is directly aimed at completely destroying a planet. All the matter and energy on the planet are reduced to the purest cosmic energy. Then, it is eaten in one bite. This method of devouring makes him unconsciously think of the truth-seeking ball. The truth-seeking ball can also devour everything formed by the nature of yin and yang, the 5 elements, and return everything to nothingness. However, compared to the truth-seeking ball, the method of devouring the planet provided by the surfboard is much simpler and more crude. In addition to the method of completely devouring the planet developed from the surfboard, Rog's biggest gain is to figure out how to transform cosmic energy into natural energy. It may not be appropriate to call it natural energy. To be more precise, it should be to transform cosmic energy into forms such as heat, gravity, or kinetic energy that are common on the planet. Quickly devouring the planet and transforming cosmic energy into other forms are the most important gains of his research over the past half a month. In addition, there are only 2 gains left, knowing that the Silver Shadowman is not dead and that the surfboard can constantly absorb energy from the universe. These studies are of no help to his ninja strength, but they allow him to see some things that can only be seen at the Heavenly Father level. The gains obtained from the surfboard, plus Njord's God-King authority. With the existence of these two things, he is confident that after eating the chakra fruit, he will quickly gain a foothold at the Heavenly Father level. If possible, he can even try to advance to the single universe level and the multiverse level. Of course, all of this has to wait until he eats the chakra fruit and improves his strength, physique, soul, and status to the peak of the Heavenly Father level. After finishing his research on the surfboard, he began his carefree life as a hands-off shopkeeper. Because of the existence of the silver surfboard, he now has fewer opportunities to use the superlight rock technique. Compared with the silver surfboard, the superlight rock technique is far inferior in speed and flexibility. Not to mention that the silver surfboard can also become a cosmic energy charger at some point. Half a month later, he went to Warnerheim again and took back Fenrir from Hela. At the same time, he learned about the recent situation in Warnerheim. It has to be said that after Gulweg succeeded as the God King, Warner Protoss finally had a little bit of the God race. The situation that was originally dominated by Hela returned to a state of parity under the command of Gulweg. And this is still under the condition that Asgard's garrison is not taken into account. If Asgard's garrison is included, Warner Protoss can be regarded as beating Hela's forces back again and again. Rog did not intervene in the war in Warnerheim and returned directly to Konoha with Fenrir. According to Hela, she has completed Fenrir's soul and promoted Fenrir from a demonic beast to a demigod. Yes, only a demigod. In the end, Fenrir failed to be promoted to the realm of godhood and godhood. However, compared to before, Fenrir still had a huge change. The most obvious change was that Fenrir changed from a black wolf to a silver wolf, and it was a silver wolf that could speak human language. As for how Hela did it, Rog didn't know. However, he was still very satisfied with Fenrir's new image. At Fenrir's request, he sent Fenrir to the werewolf kingdom on Earth, the summit of the peaks, and let Fenrir become the guardian of the werewolves. This was also the path that Black Panther god Bast had chosen to become a god. The only difference was that Black Panther god Bast chose to guard the Wakanda people at the time, while Fenrir chose to guard the werewolves. For Rog's practice of sending a demigod creature to Earth, his magic teacher, Ancient One, did not express any dissatisfaction. However, his junior brother, Strange, had some small opinions. However, Strange's opinion was directly ignored by Rog. Strange was still young and had not yet taken over the position of Sorcerer Supreme from Ancient One. After he became the Sorcerer Supreme, he would know that there were all kinds of monsters on Earth. Fenrir was a little demigod and was nothing at all. Chapter 648. After sending Fenrir back to Earth, Rog's leisure days were officially over. Now there is more than a month left before the chakra tree fully matures. He needs to adjust himself to the best state during this time, and then eat the chakra fruit that can make him an immortal. In fact, other than adjusting his condition, there was nothing else he could do. If possible, he also needs to raise the resonance of QB in his body to the level of complete compatibility. Although after eating the chakra fruit, the biju's help to him is not so obvious. But in any case, QB was exchanged for 2,000 ninja coins. It's not in his character to waste it like this. When Rog put all his attention on the adjustment of his state and the improvement of QB's resonance, his already amazing chakra amount is constantly increasing. It wasn't until he developed the sage body to 100% that he finally understood why Hashirama has far more chakra than ordinary people. Chakra is the product of the fusion of spiritual energy and physical energy, and the limit of the body determines the amount of physical energy. Although the sage body also has a limit, that limit is far beyond ordinary people. Even Rog, whose chakra amount has reached 0.7 pillar, is far from touching the limit of the sage body at this time. He can't even see where the limit of the sage body is. Time passed day by day, and Rog's chakra amount is increasing at a steady rate. What surprised him even more is that QB, who was not very compatible with him, has become extremely tacit at this time. A month and a half is not long, but it's not short either. When Rog finished this life of eating and sleeping in addition to cultivation, he opened the system and took a look at his current chakra amount and the resonance with QB. Chakra amount, 2, 2 pillar, 1. 4 pillar, 0. 8 pillar for Bijou, Jinchuriki, QB, resonance, 8. Because of the time, he was unable to raise the resonance of QB to 9 and reach a perfect fit with QB. However, he didn't pay too much attention to this. Although he was still a distance away from perfect fusion, this did not prevent him from using the nine-tailed mode and fully transforming into a tailed beast. After leaving the Hokage's exclusive training room, Kuroto returned to the Hokage's residence and took a comfortable hot bath. After that, he changed into clean clothes and opened the portal to Igo. Before he left the training room, he received a message from number 2. Igo specially contacted the Golden Jack and reported the news that the fruit of the divine tree was about to ripen. As soon as he stepped out of the portal, Rog saw the real towering tree. Glancing at the 1,000-meter tall tree of God, he sighed emotionally. After waiting for so long, this day had finally arrived. As soon as the portal behind him disappeared, Igo, who was completely formed by energy, appeared in front of him. Compared to before, Igo's appearance now looked even older. Although Igo had a head full of white hair in the past, he didn't look old at all. But now, Igo was like a real old man, revealing a trace of aging and desolate aura. The fruit you want is about to ripen. I hope you can keep your promise. Rog didn't know if it was his illusion, but he felt that Igo was really a lot older, as if he was an old man who had reached the last stage of his life. I never break my promise. Rog gave a positive answer. Although he used Kodo Amatsukami to tamper with Igo's mind to make Igo obediently cooperate with him to plant the divine tree. But in any case, Igo paid a lot for the maturity of the divine tree. The divine tree is the root of all chakra and the most important strategic weapon of the Otsutsuki clan. If the divine tree wants to mature, it needs to spread its roots to every corner of the planet and absorb the life chakra of all the creatures on the planet. When the life chakra of the entire planet is absorbed, the divine tree will mature and bear the chakra fruit. In other words, the moment the chakra fruit matures, all the life on the planet will die. If Rog had planted the divine tree in the normal way, the chakra fruit would have indeed taken all the life on the planet. However, he had used a rather tricky method to plant the divine tree on Igo, a planet that possessed self-awareness. With Igo's cooperation, the roots of the divine tree did not spread to the whole planet, and the chakra fruit did not take all the life on the planet. But even so, the divine tree still brought great harm to Igo's planet. Compared with the previous Igo star, the current Igo star is more than a little desolate. If observed from outer space, it can be clearly seen that nearly half of the Igo star has become a desert and a dead land. That's good. After this matter is over, let's try not to meet in the future. I'm old and can't stand the stimulation given by you young people. In terms of the life on the planet, Igo is still very young. But compared to Rog and the others, Igo is an out-and-out old man. He is even older than Odin. We can still meet. Don't worry, I will only do this kind of thing once, there won't be a second time. As long as you don't plan to expand the life of the planet in the future, I won't make things difficult for you. Igo may not have been a good planet in the past, but Rog still likes Igo now. In any case, Igo is giving his life to the divine tree to devour. Just this point alone has changed Rog's view of him a lot. Let's talk about that later. Since you're here, then I'll let the fruit have its final energy devour. As soon as his voice fell, Igo turned into a mass of blue-white energy and disappeared. At the same time, a stream of blue-white energy appeared on the ground and in the sky like a river. This blue-white energy is like a river flowing into the sea, constantly pouring into the divine tree. With the entry of this energy, the top of the divine tree burst out with a purple light like the sun. After seeing this scene, Rog didn't hesitate and used the super light rock technique to fly to the top of the divine tree. As the blue-white energy continued to pour in, the purple light at the top of the divine tree became more and more dazzling. When Rog flew to the top of the divine tree, the purple light was so dazzling that even he couldn't open his eyes. This dazzling purple light didn't last for too long. In less than a minute, the light gradually dimmed. When the light completely disappeared, Rog came to the top of the divine tree like a platform and walked toward the small chakra fruit. Compared to the huge body of the divine tree, the chakra fruit is so small that it makes people wonder if the fruit is ripe or not. Looking at this purple fruit that is not much bigger than the palm of his hand, Rog hesitated for a moment. Then, he stretched out his right hand and plucked the fruit. The moment he plucked the chakra fruit, the 1,000-meter-tall divine tree suddenly shook violently. Under Rog's gaze, this mountain-like divine tree quickly withered. In just a few seconds, it withered to the point where it was blown away by the wind. Rog didn't know if this is a normal phenomenon after a fruit has ripened, but he didn't care too much about it. Instead, he focused on the chakra fruit in his hand. From its appearance, the chakra fruit is a bit like a purple apple. Just by looking at its appearance, Rog couldn't see anything special about this chakra fruit. But when he used the chakra perception technique to seriously sense the fruit in his hand, he felt an indescribable terrifying chakra. Unlike the so-called 7-attribute chakra, the chakra in the fruit doesn't have any attributes. It is just a pure primitive chakra. It should be right. The divine tree is the root of all chakra, so the chakra fruit of the divine tree should also be the purest and most original chakra. After taking back his gaze from the chakra fruit, Rog once again cast the portal magic and returned to Konoha Hidden Village. Although Igo is quite pleasing to the eye now, he doesn't dare to eat the chakra fruit in front of him. Who knows what will happen after eating the chakra fruit? After returning to the training room that only he can use, he swallowed his saliva and then put the chakra fruit in his mouth. After hesitating for a few seconds, he opened his mouth and bit the chakra fruit. At the moment when the chakra fruit entered his mouth, he unexpectedly found that the chakra fruit didn't taste as bad as he thought. It could even be said that the taste was not bad. Soon, the chakra fruit was completely swallowed by him, not even the core was left. That's it? The chakra fruit was eaten, but Rog didn't feel anything different. His body didn't change, the chakra fruit didn't change, nothing changed. What's going on? It shouldn't be. The sapling of the divine tree was exchanged from the system, there should be no problem. The ripening of the fruit was also done under his watch. Igo couldn't have had the opportunity to do anything, and it's impossible for Igo to do anything. Others may not know how much importance he attaches to the chakra fruit, but Igo must be very clear. He wouldn't risk his life for that. So what's the situation now? Just as Rog was considering whether to do a detailed examination of his body, an unbearable pain suddenly came from his forehead. Fuck. Even if he has been fighting for a long time, he was stimulated by this pain and couldn't help but hold his head, and his body trembled uncontrollably. The pain from his forehead didn't stop, and there was also a burst of tearing inhuman pain in his body. If it was physical pain, it was still at a level that he could barely accept. But what happened next was completely beyond Rog's expectations and control. The chakra in his body began to operate uncontrollably. The 9-tailed beast that was sealed in his body also let out a painful howl, and frantically destroyed the seal. From the beginning, he had the 7 attributes of chakra: fire, water, wind, thunder, earth, yin, and yang. It began to develop in a direction that he had never understood before. Or rather, fusion. The 7 attributes disappeared little by little, and in their place, there was a golden chakra without any attributes. While the chakra was fusing strangely, the pain from his forehead became more and more obvious, as if someone was constantly hacking his forehead with an axe. The pain and stimulation from every corner of his body occupied all his consciousness and thoughts. He couldn't even feel the passage of time and the existence of space. When his consciousness returned to his body, Rog found himself kneeling on one knee in the training room with sweat all over his face. As soon as he opened his eyes, he raised his right hand and touched his forehead. Then, he didn't touch anything that shouldn't exist. Fortunately, it's not the situation he imagined. But just in case, he still used the flying Thor and returned from the training room to the bathroom of the Hokage's mansion. After confirming that he didn't grow a third eye, he finally breathed a sigh of relief. When the severe pain came from his forehead, he remembered Otsutsuki Kagaya and Otsutsuki Momoshiki with 3 eyes. However, it turned out that he was just scaring himself. As a normal person on Earth, he didn't want to grow an eye on his forehead that shouldn't exist. Even if that eye is Rinnegan, it's still not good. Although there was no new Rinnegan on his forehead, the Rinnegan in his right eye was a little different from before. The Rinnegan in his right eye was an ordinary lavender Rinnegan. At this time, his Rinnegan has become golden Rinnegan. What's more different is that on the circle of Rinnegan, there is a black Magatama. He counted a total of 9 Magatama. After counting the Magatama in his right eye, he looked at his left eye. His left eye, which was supposed to be Sharingan, has also become golden Rinnegan, and it also has Magatama. But unlike the 9 Magatama in his right eye, his left eye only has 6 Magatama. At this time, is there still a sense of asymmetry? Thinking of this in his heart, he guessed a reason that is very likely to be the truth. After his right eye became Rinnegan, there was already an imbalance in strength between his 2 eyes. And this imbalance was still there after he ate the chakra fruit. The right eye was originally an ordinary Rinnegan. Under the strengthening of the chakra fruit, it was strengthened to 9 Magatama Rinnegan. And the left eye, which was originally Manjikyu Sharingan, was strengthened to 6 Magatama Rinnegan. If he knew this would happen, he should have upgraded both eyes to Rinnegan. After complaining about himself being lazy before, he took off his clothes that were completely soaked in sweat and began to take a bath again. Although the left eye has 3 Magatama less than the right eye, he is not particularly worried. If he guessed right, he should have the opportunity to upgrade his left eye to 9 Magatama. Of course, if he can't upgrade it, it doesn't matter. Chapter 649. The 2 eyes were different, and it wasn't a day or 2 for Rog. And the power of the 6 Tomo Rinnegan may not be weaker than the 9 Tomo Rinnegan. If used well, not to mention the 6 Tomo Rinnegan, even the ordinary Rinnegan would be amazing. Rog, who was lying in the bathtub, suddenly had a feeling of temporarily losing his goal. This feeling, not long after he got Kyubi, he also had once. At that time, it was Xiao Hei who let him regain his goal. But now, this sense of emptiness of losing his goal once again emerged in his mind. While thinking, he suddenly remembered Thanos, who he didn't know where he went. Thanos was reincarnated from his Edo Tensei. Strictly speaking, Thanos is also his summon beast. But because he didn't bury a technique on Thanos, his control of Thanos is far less than the control of Punisher. Not to mention control, he doesn't even know where Thanos is and whether he is still alive. As the caster, he can indeed sense the location of the Edo Tensei. But ninjutsu is not omnipotent, and his sensing range is not large enough to cover the entire universe. Even the Punisher on Earth, he can only sense a general direction now. Counting it, there is only half a year left before the final battle with Thanos. He doesn't know if Thanos can restore himself to his normal state before the day of the final battle. Although Rog gave some suggestions to Thanos and asked him to find the help of Death, one of the 5 gods of creation in the universe, but whether Thanos can find Death, and whether Death is willing to really resurrect Thanos, no one can say for sure. In some parallel universes, Death took a fancy to Thanos, but this doesn't mean that Death in this world can also take a fancy to Thanos. Time passed a little bit, and after taking a hot bath for more than half an hour, he finally left the bathroom and changed into a clean set of clothes. Although he doesn't know the specific situation of Thanos, he still intends to implement it according to the established plan, that is, to use this half a year to completely stabilize his strength, and then have a final battle with Thanos. After enjoying an authentic Chinese meal in the Hokage's residence, Kuroto returned to the training room with the Flying Thunder God. He ate the chakra fruit, and he also got the 9 Tomo Rinnegan of Otsutsuki Kagaya and the 6 Tomo Rinnegan of Uchiha Sasuke. However, he did not fully understand the state of his body. The 2 Magatama eyes were the most obvious change. Inside the invisible body, there might be some unexpected changes that he couldn't foresee. First, he checked his chakra. Compared to his previous 7 attribute chakra, his current chakra no longer had any attributes. Its color had also changed from light blue to gold. He condensed a Rasengan in his right hand, and then he saw a golden Rasengan. Although he personally preferred the previous blue Rasengan, the gold one looked okay. It gave off a feeling that it was very expensive. After confirming that there was no damage to his meridians and organs, he allowed his consciousness to enter the 8 trigram seal. The internal space in the 8 trigram seal looked no different from before. It was still a huge cave, with a pool of water in the cave, and a closed metal door in the innermost part. The environment didn't seem to have changed, but the problem was that Kyubi, who should have stayed in the sealed door, was gone. What happened? When he was suffering from the pain caused by the chakra fruit, he vaguely felt Kyubi going berserk. But at that time, he was in extreme pain, so he didn't pay attention to Kyubi. After entering the sealed space, he suddenly remembered this matter. Rog frowned as he walked up to the seal gate. He raised his head and looked at the seal talisman that was still intact. The seal is still there, so Kyubi should still be there. But the problem is that Kyubi, who was lying on the door all day, is gone. Eating the chakra fruit will cause the disappearance of Bijou? This thought appeared in Rog's mind for the first time. But this guess was quickly thrown to the back of his mind. After opening the system and taking a look, he found that his Jinchuriki column was still there, which was unexpected. He was still Kyubi's Jinchuriki. So the question is, where did Kyubi go? I spent 2,000 ninja coins to exchange for the complete Kyubi. Thinking of the pain he suffered when he accumulated ninja coins, he directly condensed the golden chakra hand and tore the seal on the door. Then, he pushed open the tens of meters high metal door. Bang! The metal door slammed heavily on the wall of the cave, shaking a lot of huge stones. Rog ignored the falling stones and went straight into the dark cave where the fire couldn't illuminate. However, just as he moved more than 10 meters, a claw bigger than a person attacked him. Rog didn't dodge, he directly raised his right hand and grabbed one of the claws, holding the right hand that was similar to a human's hand. It turned out to be waiting for me here. After tearing the seal on the door, he felt Kyubi's chakra, and then he understood Kyubi's idea. Although Kyubi in his body is not as spiritual as Kurama, he also has his own thoughts. Although it's the instinctive thinking of a beast, it's enough to make some choices. For example, after suffering some inexplicable disaster, Kyubi chose to attack him as a Jinchuriki. Before eating the chakra fruit, Rog was confident that he could directly suppress Kyubi with Manjiki Sharingan. Not to mention that he now has 2 Magatama Rinnegan. Without any thinking, he directly urged the eye power of Rinnegan and let these invisible eye power fall on Kyubi, who was hiding in the shadows. In less than a second, Kyubi, who had a strong killing intent towards him, was forcibly tamed by him. After suppressing Kyubi with dojutsu, he stretched out his left hand and snapped his fingers, and a cluster of flames appeared out of thin air in the cave. Under the illumination of the flames, he slowly said to Kyubi, who could fully understand what he said, "This is the last time I discuss this with you. If you still don't agree, I won't force you in the future, but you won't have any chance to perceive the outside world, so I hope you can answer me after serious consideration. Are you willing to lend me all your power without reservation?" Rog has tried many methods to improve the resonance between himself and Kyubi. But no matter how he deals with it, there is always a looming barrier between him and Kyubi. This is why he has been unable to increase the resonance to 9. After eating the chakra fruit, or to be precise, after obtaining Magatama Rinnegan, he finally knew what the problem was. He is not Naruto, and Kyubi is not Kurama with enough wisdom. It is impossible for him to achieve a perfect fit with Kyubi using Naruto's method. Kurama has the same wisdom as humans, so he can understand Naruto and is willing to be Naruto's most reliable friend. But Kyubi in front of him can't do this. Because from the beginning to the end, Kyubi in front of him is a bijou with beast instincts. There is only one way to make a beast fully recognize you and obey you, that is, to completely beat it and let it know who is the master. So Rog doesn't intend to reason with Kyubi, nor does he intend to have a friendly conversation with him. He wants to use his fist to let Kyubi know who is the real boss. After saying that, he put down Kyubi's paw and silently waited for Kyubi's response. Although Kyubi can't speak, he is sure that Kyubi definitely knows what he is saying. Even a pet dog can roughly understand the master's meaning. As a bijou, Kyubi can't understand his meaning. 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 20 seconds. Rog didn't urge Kyubi, but quietly stood in front of Kyubi. He gave Kyubi 1 minute. If Kyubi doesn't respond or refuse him within a minute, then he will let Kyubi completely lose the opportunity to perceive the outside world. Kyubi does have a lot of chakra, but for him who has eaten the chakra fruit, chakra is no longer a problem. Except for the Kyubi mode and the complete bijou mode, Kyubi's value to him has dropped to a dispensable state. 50 seconds, 55 seconds, just when Rog was about to turn around and leave the cave, and then completely seal Kyubi in the cave, Kyubi finally gave a response. Kyubi put away his paw, clenched his right hand into a fist, and then put his huge fist in front of Rog. Fist bump? Although his Kyubi is not Kurama, he still retains the habit of fist bumping. Looking at Kyubi with satisfaction, Rog also raised his right hand and bumped fists with Kyubi. When these two completely unequal fists collided with each other, a strange feeling suddenly appeared in Rog's body. Without opening the system page, he knew that this strange feeling was the feeling of perfect resonance. Kyubi finally completely recognized him. From today onwards, you'll be called 9 Circles. Rog, who is bad at naming, gave Kyubi a new name that he thought was okay. However, as soon as he said the name, Kyubi put his fist away. Dissatisfaction was written all over his face. You don't like 9 circles, what about 90,000? Kyubi continued to shake his head. 90,000 is not enough, what about 9 ropes? Kyubi still shook his head. Last time, 9 luminaries. If you still don't like this name, then you can only be called 9 circles. Although Kyubi did not understand what 9 luminaries meant, he knew that the name 9 luminaries was already much better than 9 circles and 90,000. After seeing Kyubi, no, now it should be 9 luminaries nodding satisfactorily, Rog continued, I won't put the seal back, you can move freely in this relatively spacious space. If there is a chance in the future, I will find a way to let you go outside and experience the real world. 9 luminaries gave him face, so Rog would certainly consider 9 luminaries' behalf. Of course, it was impossible to let 9 luminaries completely leave the seal, but he could use the reality gem to create a temporary shell for 9 luminaries and let it experience the real world for a period of time in the outside world, just like what he did on Titan Star. After dealing with 9 luminaries, his consciousness returned to his body and he continued to check his condition. More than half an hour later, he finished checking his body. Excluding the strengthening of his body, there was nothing wrong with his body and he was very healthy. There were no hidden injuries, there was nothing wrong with him, his meridian system was intact, and the amount of chakra was also very satisfactory. Before eating the chakra fruit, his own chakra amount was 4 pillars. Now, his chakra amount has reached an astonishing 5 pillars, and this is not counting the bija chakra. If the bija chakra is added, his chakra amount has reached an astonishing 4 pillars. In addition, he didn't know if it was his illusion, but he always felt that the golden chakra consumed less energy when using ninjutsu, and the response was faster. The consumption was less, which was a good thing. However, the fact that it had a faster response seemed to be of little use. He could use ninjutsu without any seals, and it was faster on the basis of instant cast, but the result was still instant cast. After confirming that there was nothing wrong with his current body, he began to think about the ninjutsu that Otsutsuki Kagaya had. Infinite Tsukimi was not needed, he had no intention of ruling the world. However, he was still very interested in ninjutsu like Yomibai, Heaven's Defense, 80 Gods Air Attack, Grey Bone, and Expansion Truth-Seeking Ball. After deciding the plan for the rest of the year, he left the training room with the Flying Thunder God and came to the Hokage building. To be precise, he came to Hinata. At this time, Hinata was looking at the display in front of her seriously and frowning from time to time. Next to Hinata was Rosie, who had been an assistant for some time. Rog, why are you here? As soon as Rog appeared, Hinata's gaze shifted from the display to him. Your eyes? Before Rog could speak, Hinata asked. I ate the fruit, and then, as one of the only 2 ninjas in Konoha, Hinata was the only one who knew the role of the chakra fruit. So that's how it is. Then if I'm not wrong, you're going to ask me to develop ninjutsu again? Yes, there are a few ninjutsu that I need your help with. Rog's combat power is far beyond Hinata's, but in terms of ninjutsu development ability, even 10 of him together are not Hinata's opponent. Although he can also choose to go to the system to exchange for ninjutsu, he doesn't need to look to know how expensive the ninjutsu he wants will be. Now, he has no interest in performing tasks to accumulate ninjutsu. Rosie, you go out. Hinata didn't directly answer Rog, but asked Rosie to leave the office. When Rosie left the office and closed the door, Hinata continued, "Tell me, what kind of ninjutsu are you going to develop this time?" Chapter 650. After sorting out the language, Rog told Hinata about the Sharingan ninjutsu he wanted to learn. Of course, he mainly introduced the effects, characteristics, and some of his own understanding of these ninjutsu. As for the specific development, he can't do much. At most, he can cooperate with Hinata to do some tests on the Sharingan. The ninjutsu you want to develop are not simple, I may not be able to develop them. After listening to Rog's description, Hinata frowned and answered. If possible, she certainly hopes that she can meet all the requirements made by Rog. But some things can't be done just because she wants to. Although Hinata has the Byakugan, she only has the Byakugan. Not to mention the Sharingan, she doesn't even know much about the ordinary Rinnegan. It doesn't matter, just do your best. Looking at Hinata's dignified expression, Rog felt that he was a bit too irresponsible as the 4th Hokage. Not to mention Tobirama, who is a master of ninjutsu research and development, even compared to the other Hokage, his ninjutsu research and development ability is far inferior. Even the 7th Hokage, Naruto, who is known as a wall hanger, has at least developed a dozen or 20 different ninjutsu. Okay. Then wait for me, I will transfer the work at hand to number 2. After saying that, Hinata delegated all the work that she is currently dealing with and may need to deal with in the future to number 2, who never asks for overtime pay. After completing the handover of work, she stretched out her right hand towards Rog. Rog didn't hesitate and smiled and took Hinata's hand. Then the two disappeared from the office together. Although Hinata's ability to develop and learn ninjutsu is amazing, for some reason, she can't learn the Flying Thor ninjutsu. Even if Rog personally taught her, it didn't help. After several attempts, Hinata also gave up learning the Flying Thor. Through the Thor, Rog and Hinata arrived at Hinata's personal laboratory. Although Rog is the Hokage, in the village, the laboratory with the highest specifications is not his laboratory, but Hinata's. What he owned was the training room with the highest specifications. After arriving at the laboratory, Hinata went straight to the 5-meter-long test bench and put on the white coat hanging on the side. Then, he took out a syringe. Seeing these needles of different sizes, Rog unconsciously swallowed his saliva, and then came to Hinata as if he had accepted his fate. There was nothing wrong with Hinata doing experiments. The only drawback was that it consumed a lot of HP. It was the kind of consumption of blood in the truest sense. When Hinata collected enough blood samples, she checked Rog from top to bottom, from inside to outside. After that, she drove Rog out of the laboratory. The rest is Hinata's battlefield. In this regard, there wasn't much Log could do to help. To be precise, he could only provide experimental samples and test targets. After coming out of Hinata's exclusive laboratory, Rog didn't plan to return to Earth or go anywhere else. He returned to his Hokage's residence alone and put on the Kree Empire's console game helmet. Professional things should be left to the professionals, this is the principle he has always believed in. Although it seems that he is lazy, for Hinata, as long as he doesn't cause trouble, he is the best help. Hinata was studying Rog's Sharingan ninjutsu according to his current physical condition, while Rog was playing virtual games to pass the time. Time passed day by day. Soon, a week had passed. As Hinata predicted, it was extremely difficult to develop Sharingan ninjutsu such as Ryuban, Heaven's Defense, and 80 God's Air Attack. A week has passed, and Hinata still hasn't figured out the principles of these jutsu, let alone successfully developing them. Although she encountered a bottleneck in the development of these ninjutsu, through the study of Sharingan, Hinata accidentally got the idea of further developing the Byakugan. For example, using the Byakugan to release genjutsu, or releasing pressure from a distance, etc. When Hinata told Rog about her findings, Rog couldn't help but take a deep breath. As far as he knows, only Otsutsuki Kagaya can release genjutsu and pressure with the Byakugan. He didn't disclose this to Hinata. But he didn't expect that when Hinata was developing Sharingan ninjutsu, she would accidentally discover this. Hinata wouldn't show signs of developing into Otsutsuki Kagaya, right? However, if Hinata is really developing into Otsutsuki Kagaya, it seems to be a good thing. Looking at Hinata's face full of collagen and still as pure as a minor, Rog's mind was filled with some unhealthy images. After expelling these messy thoughts from his mind, he first confirmed Hinata's discovery of the further development of the Byakugan, and then let Hinata return her attention to the study of Sharingan. The further development of the Byakugan can be solved later. But the ninjutsu of Sharingan, he will need to use them in half a year. When Hinata returned her energy to the development of Sharingan and those ninjutsu, Rog also ended his decadent life that he maintained for a week and left Tatooine on his silver surfboard. Of course, before leaving Tatooine, he said hello to Hinata, lest she need to find him but don't know where to find him. Through the portal, he returned to Earth. However, he didn't return to Konoha's headquarters in Washington, nor did he return to New York where he first wandered. Instead, he came to the Werewolf Kingdom, the summit of the peaks. Counting the days, Fenrir has been back as the guardian of the werewolves for some time. He wanted to see how Fenrir has been doing recently, and by the way, see how Bulan and the other werewolves have built the kingdom. Compared with the last time he came, the summit of the peaks has changed a lot. In the previous summit of the peaks, there were only Bulan and other werewolves, as well as the Wakanda people who had been reduced to slaves. But now, the summit of the peaks has opened foreign trade. What he didn't expect was that Bulan and others also formed a private security company and began to accept some security tasks. Strictly speaking, Bulan and others still belong to Konoha's establishment and are members of Konoha's armed forces. But since Rog handed over Wakanda to the werewolves, Bulan and others rarely appear in Konoha. Not only Konoha's headquarters, but even Konoha's hidden village on Tatooine doesn't have many werewolves now. Only those werewolves who have been transformed by extremists and belong to the Molten Wolf Pack continue to stay in Konoha's hidden village. He has no opinion on the establishment of a private security company by Bulan and others. Although the werewolves have their own kingdom, it is almost impossible to expect them to develop their kingdom little by little like ordinary people. So if they want to develop the summit of the peaks, these werewolves will sooner or later embark on the path of mercenaries. Establishing a private security company is also one of the ways these werewolves can best exert their own advantages. Other countries can increase foreign trade income by selling arms, and werewolves can certainly sell their own forces to obtain foreign trade income. Strictly speaking, there is no essential difference between the two. After arriving at the summit of the peaks, Rog didn't go to see Bulan and others, and he didn't even enter the werewolf cities to take a look. Instead, he stepped on the silver surfboard and flew directly towards Fenrir's location. He didn't know if it was his illusion, but after he became a divine father, no, to be precise, after eating the chakra fruit, he felt that he was becoming less and less interested in other things. Even the console games that he used to like very much in the past can't bring him any excitement now. If it's described in a more artistic way, he feels that he seems to be less and less human now. He doesn't know if this is the change brought about by the improvement of his life essence after becoming a divine father, or the change brought about by eating the chakra fruit. But he instinctively felt that this change was not what he wanted. He didn't know how long this weakening of humanity situation would last, and he wasn't sure what this change would eventually become. But there was one thing he was sure of, and that was that he did not want to become a god who was uninterested in anything and everything. So, he returned to Earth and planned to find someone to talk about this issue specifically. Among the people he knew, there were not many people who could give him advice in this regard. To be precise, there was only one wolf and one person. The wolf must be Fenrir. Fenrir was promoted from a magical beast to a demigod creature, and in this regard, he should have a similar experience. As for that person, of course, it was his magic teacher, Ancient One. Ancient One was a divine father, and he walked step by step from an ordinary human to a divine father. What Rog was experiencing now, Ancient One had experienced it before. However, instead of going directly to Ancient One, he planned to see Fenrir first. After all, there were some things that he could talk to Fenrir about, but he couldn't talk to Ancient One. On an unknown mountain peak, Rog saw Fenrir lying on the top of the mountain with a bored expression on his face. "Why are you here?" Fenrir raised his head and asked first. "Nothing, I just came to see you." After that, Rog jumped off the surfboard and went directly to Fenrir's side and sat down leaning on Fenrir. "Your smell has changed, it doesn't smell as good as before." As soon as Rog sat down, Fenrir continued. "I have experienced some things recently, and my body has changed a little." Rog explained briefly. What Fenrir said about the smell changing was not that there was any smell on his body, but that his current aura was very different from before. Others may not be able to perceive it, but Fenrir, as a demigod, can easily discover this. Even if Rog has concealed his own aura, it still can't be hidden from Fenrir. Do you feel that your humanity is getting less and less?" Fenrir glanced at Rog beside him and asked silently. "You can see that too? It seems that after becoming a demigod, your harvest is not small." Rog said with a smile, and touched Fenrir's white hair by the way. "Because I am the same now, I feel that my wolf nature is getting weaker and weaker." Fenrir leaned his head close to Rog and said with a lonely face, "In the beginning, I was Hela's war pet. I did whatever she asked me to do, and accompanied her to conquer the 9 lands. Later, Hela was imprisoned by Odin, and I was locked in the dungeon where I could not see the sun. After resurrecting, I became your war pet and fought with you. Of course, most of the time you did not need my help, you could defeat all the enemies by yourself. After following you, I met Blackie and the others, and I had a good time in Konoha, but there were no fights, and it was a little boring. Later, you fed me the shard of divinity and took me to Warnerheim to see Hela, and let her solve the small problems in my body. Finally, I became what I am now, a demigod creature." Fenrir's tone was flat as he described his past, like an old man recalling his youth. "But after becoming a demigod creature, you feel that everything has changed. You seem to have lost interest in everything, and you even like to recall the past life more and more, right?" Rog said while stroking Fenrir. "Yes, Hela told me that this is because I already have divinity. But I still feel that the days before when I was heartless and only needed to fight and live according to the master's orders were more pleasant." Speaking of this, Fenrir's tone became more lonely. "Get up, let's fight. Before, I only used the wooden dragon and the wooden man to beat you. Now I want to train you personally." Rog stood up directly and said to Fenrir with a serious face. "Now? Otherwise, do you need to pick a special day? This is what you said. Even if you are my master, I will not hold back. I don't need you to hold back. If you can beat me, it's your ability." After that, Rog's body shone with a golden light, and he hooked his finger toward Fenrir. He originally intended to learn some experience from Fenrir, but he did not expect Fenrir to be more confused than himself. At least he knew what he had to do in the future, but Fenrir directly entered the state of recalling his youth, like an old man waiting for the end of his life. In order to let Fenrir, a new demigod, find some goals in his wolf life, he planned to train Fenrir personally. At the same time, he wanted to test how strong he was as a heavenly father. When Rog's body shone with a golden light, Fenrir also stood up and looked at him condescendingly. Then, a claw was sent toward him. Heavenly Father Rog versus Demigod Fenrir. It officially began. Chapter 651. Fenrir became whiter and stronger. But in front of Rog, who ate the chakra fruit, it was still not enough. Although Fenrir had worked very hard, and even used all his strength, the results still did not change. More than 10 minutes later, Fenrir was lying on the ground on the top of the mountain which had collapsed beyond recognition. It stretched out its red tongue and gasped for air. In terms of time, Fenrir's performance this time was already very good. After all, Rog was now a godfather. But the problem was that in the process of fighting with Fenrir, Rog didn't use a heavy hand, and he didn't even release ninjutsu. He only relied on his current unreasonably strong body and his own close combat skills to completely beat Fenrir to the ground. It was not particularly easy for him to defeat Fenrir, who was already a demigod creature, by relying only on physical strength. Although Fenrir's body was a bit big, his agility and speed were not bad. Several times, Rog's arm was almost bitten off by Fenrir. However, the person who won in the end was still him. When Fenrir was lying on the ground to recover his strength, Rog did not hesitate to lie directly on Fenrir's body, calming his somewhat chaotic breath. Although Rog fought with Fenrir in order to let Fenrir find the goal of wolf life. But he had to say that after venting on Fenrir, he also regained some of his previous feelings. He regained the pleasure of enjoying the battle and defeating the enemy. "Are you hungry?" After lying on Fenrir for more than 10 minutes, Rog suddenly said. "I'm not hungry." Although the battle just now was fierce, for Fenrir, who was already a demigod, he didn't need to eat to replenish his strength. "I'm not hungry, but I just want to eat something now. Do you want to join me?" After hearing Rog's words, Fenrir looked at him with a look of caring for a retard. After more than 10 seconds of silence, Fenrir slowly opened his mouth and said, "Do you think my body type is suitable to go out and eat with you? What's wrong with that? You're the guardian of the werewolves. If you want to eat, who would dare to stop you? Speaking of which, I don't think we've ever had a meal together." Rog recalled his previous interactions with Fenrir, but he couldn't find any memories of them having a meal together. "Strictly speaking, there has been one. When you asked me to pretend to be your ancestor, we had barbecue together at Konoha's headquarters." Fenrir recalled and said. "That time doesn't count. That barbecue wasn't very serious. Let's go, let's taste the werewolf's cooking." After that, Rog rode on Fenrir's back and patted his head. Fenrir sighed helplessly, stood up, and carried Rog to the nearest werewolf city. Tens of minutes later, a city with a werewolf aesthetic appeared in front of them. Although they were all built with reinforced concrete, the style of the city was completely different from that of other countries. Wild. This city had a wild nature that other cities didn't have. The arrival of Rog and Fenrir quickly attracted the attention of the werewolves in the city. After explaining the purpose of their visit to the werewolves in front of them, they soon had an exclusive box, as well as a bunch of chefs and waiters. Although werewolves were not ordinary humans, their cooking methods were similar to humans. If there was a difference, it was that the werewolf's diet was mainly meat. In other words, it was all meat. For this meal, Rog and Fenrir ate for a long time. 2 hours later, they left the city under the gaze of the werewolves. "Well, that's it for today. I'll come to you next time when I have time." After summoning the silver surfboard in front of him, Rog opened the portal to Camartage and disappeared with the surfboard in front of Fenrir. After Rog walked into the portal, Fenrir wanted to say something, but in the end, he didn't say anything. Camartage was still the same, there was no change. A sorcerer practicing spells, a sorcerer reading a book, a sorcerer basking in the sun. After taking a look at these sorcerers, Rog walked towards the hall that had not changed for thousands of years. As before, Ancient One was still sitting in the fixed position, brewing the fixed honey tea, and shaking the folding fan that never left his side. "Teacher." After saying hello to Ancient One, Rog let the silver surfboard float aside and sat opposite Ancient One. Ancient One first glanced at the floating silver surfboard, and then set his eyes on Rog. "It seems that you have also taken that step." Ancient One said it very euphemistically, but Rog knew that she was talking about him becoming a divine father. "Yes, this is something that was decided early on." While talking, Rog picked up the teapot on the table and poured a cup for Ancient One, and then poured a cup for himself. "Looking at you, you should have encountered that problem too. Tell me about it. It's easier to talk to smart people, and you don't need to start a topic at all." After taking a sip of the honey tea that had not changed at all, Rog told Ancient One about the change in his mentality after becoming a divine father. After listening to Rog's story, Ancient One did not answer his question directly, but looked at him very seriously. Just when Rog was a little scared by Ancient One finally spoke. You can only find the answer to this question by yourself. If you can't find it, you can go to the multiverse and have a look. Rog didn't expect that the suggestion given by Ancient One would actually be this. Go to the multiverse and have a look. This may be difficult for others. But for Rog, especially for him who has studied magic in Camartage, it's not very difficult. And what Ancient One said about going to the multiverse and having a look was definitely not to let him go to other universes, but to let his soul feel the multiverse. Simply put, it's strange out-of-body experience of the multiverse. Will this be useful? It's not that Rog doesn't believe in Ancient One, it's just that he doesn't think this experience will help his mentality. Yes. Ancient One answered with a serious face. Okay, then I'll give it a try. Although he instinctively felt that this method would not work, but since Ancient One said so, there is no loss in trying it. After taking a few deep breaths, Rog cast an out-of-body magic and let his soul leave his body. Just when he was about to actively sense the multiverse, Ancient One suddenly stood up and came to him with a folding fan. Before he could understand what Ancient One was going to do, Ancient One's palm patted directly on the chest of his soul. No. Actively sensing the existence of the multiverse and passively sensing the multiverse are two completely different things. Simply put, it's the difference between having the initiative and not having the initiative. If Rog actively senses the multiverse, he can decide when to end and let his soul return to his body. But if it's passive sensing, then it depends on when Ancient One will let him come back. When he saw Ancient One's right palm coming towards him, he instinctively wanted to end the out-of-body experience. However, in front of Ancient One, whose magic level is several levels higher than him, he has no room for resistance. In just a moment, he felt his soul floating into outer space. Then, as if passing through a black hole, he entered the bizarre multiverse. Although he knew that Ancient One would not have the idea of hurting him, this experience of being forcibly sent to the multiverse still made him feel a little uncomfortable. However, his displeasure quickly disappeared. Because the indescribable feeling of his soul experiencing the multiverse quickly occupied all his thoughts. When his soul entered the multiverse, he lost his perception of time and space. He was like a fallen leaf that had fallen into the river, allowing the river to take him to an unknown territory. Rog doesn't know how long he has been wandering in the multiverse, nor does he remember how many strange worlds he has experienced. The only thing he can be sure of is that he is becoming calmer and more adapted to this indescribable strange feeling. When his soul was finally pulled back to his own body, he found that he was not in the hall, but in the room where he had lived. At this time, he was lying on the wooden bed that was many times older than him. Beside the bed was Strange, who was wearing a hovering cloak. How long have I been gone? Judging from the room he is currently in, his soul should have been wandering outside for a long time. But for how long, he can't be sure. 10 years. Strange glanced at Rog and said calmly. 10 years? Rog looked at Strange as if looking at an idiot. Although he doesn't know how long he has been in the multiverse, it is definitely not 10 years. Not to mention anything else, his body has long ceased to exist after 10 years of not eating or drinking. Your joking level needs to be improved. After rolling his eyes at Strange, Rog stood up and moved some stiff body. Then, he took out his mobile phone and took a look. What 10 years, it's only been 7 days. Sensei said that you can go back after you wake up. The problem you encountered should have been solved. If it hasn't been solved, come again. Strange stood up and relayed Ancient One's words. Thanks Sensei for me. After summoning the silver surfboard floating in the corner of the room, Rog opened the portal back to Konoha Hidden Village. Then, he left Camartage with the surfboard. It has to be said that the way Ancient One helped him solve the weakening of humanity is a bit too simple and crude. Don't you feel that humanity has weakened? No problem, just go to the multiverse and experience your own insignificance. At that time, not to mention humanity, even the bestial nature can be completely stimulated. Although Ancient One's method is very crude, the effect is also very good. After seeing those strange multiverse, Rog doesn't have any thoughts now. He just wants to be a good person, a person who can eat, sleep, and do what he likes. After returning to Konoha Hidden Village with the surfboard, Rog came to the top of the Hokage building and looked at the entire Konoha Hidden Village. This is my village, this is my planet, this is my... Thinking of this, Rog switched Sharingan to be a Kugan and looked at Hinata, who was working hard in the laboratory. Very good, this kind of life is very good. If it weren't for the agreement with Thanos and the fact that he couldn't find Thanos now, Rog would have directly cancelled the ultimate battle. In fact, there is nothing to fight about. It's not like Thanos didn't lose to him. Winning once is a win, winning twice is also a win. Although that time Thanos lost its last resistance because of the backlash from the power gem, it was because of the backlash from the power gem. But even if there was no backlash from the power gem, the one who lost in the end must be Thanos. As for Thanos wanting to destroy half of the life in the universe, this is also easy to solve. Just give Thanos a few books on the sustainable development of Xianxia family and family planning. There are many ways to solve the problem of too many people resulting in insufficient resources. Why do you have to use the most crude and ineffective one? With the reproduction rate of human beings and other intelligent creatures, eliminating half of the life in the universe at once is not a solution to the problem at all, it's just pushing the time of the problem back. After despising Thanos' approach, Rog and the Flying Thunder God came to Hinata's laboratory. At this time, Hinata was still developing the Sharingan ninjutsu. Her beautiful long black hair was tied into a simple ponytail, and although the white coat on her body covered the curves of her body, it still revealed a charming back. Looking at Hinata, who put almost all her energy into the research, Rog came to her side and grabbed her right hand. Don't study it, give yourself a vacation. After that, Rog didn't wait for Hinata to answer, and the Flying Thunder God took Hinata back to the Hokage's residence. What do you want to eat tonight, Chinese, French, or Italian? While talking, Rog picked up the kitchen apron and skillfully put it on. Chinese food. Okay, Miss Hinata, the Chinese food you want will be delivered to you right away. Opening the refrigerator and taking a look, Rog began to make the only home-cooked dishes he knew. Hinata, on the other hand, sat at the dining table and looked at his back with a gentle face. Early the next morning, Hinata wanted to return to the laboratory to continue the experiment, but before she could get up, she was pulled back to bed by Rog. You're on vacation now, so you don't have to go to the laboratory. After being sent to the multiverse by Ancient One for a week, Rog's mentality changed a lot. Whether it's strength or power, it's not the most important thing. What's important is the person he wants to protect. As for the rest, he doesn't care. Isn't there a decisive battle between you and Thanos? Hinata leaned on Rog's shoulder and asked softly. Don't worry about him, even if it's me now, I can still beat him down. It doesn't matter if I have those ninjutsu or not. If he really becomes stronger than me, then I'll stand him up and let him fight with Ancient One. Chapter 652. After listening to Rog's explanation, Hinata stretched out her right index finger and drew circles on his chest. Then, she said lightly, well, it's up to you. More than an hour later, Hinata got up, left the Hokage's mansion, and went to the Hokage building. Although she didn't have to study ninjutsu for the time being, unlike Rog, who was used to being lazy, Hinata was a very responsible person. So, she began to deal with the affairs of Konoha's hidden village. Rog didn't say anything about Hinata's decision. The reason why he can be a hands-off boss is because he has Hinata's silent support behind him. Otherwise, he wouldn't be as relaxed as he is now. Every successful man has a woman who silently works for him. Hinata proved this with practical actions. When Hinata went to the Hokage building to deal with the affairs of the village, Rog also left the mansion and began to stroll in the village. Although he said that he was strolling, he was actually going to find the Punisher. Konoha's headquarters in the Washington area is now just an external facade. In addition to letting others know that Konoha hasn't completely left the earth, no one lives there. Most of the people have moved to Konoha's hidden village. To be precise, they have settled in Konoha's hidden village. After all, compared with the earth, Konoha's hidden village is far superior to the earth in terms of natural environment and technology. Rog first went to the Punisher's house. The result was no surprise. His first summoned beast and subordinate were now performing official duties outside. Not only was the Punisher not at home, but even the Red Tank and the Abomination were also not at home. Except for him, it seems that everyone is busy building Konoha's hidden village. Even Walter now has a job of his own. Konoha's chief psychological counselor. This is Walter's current position. After walking around the inner city for most of the time, Rog finally found a guy who also has nothing to do. Blackie. His previous weapon, Blackie, is now as idle as him. Strictly speaking, it's not particularly idle. He doesn't know whether it's because of his influence or Blackie's own preferences. Now, Blackie likes to taste food and play games. A born fighting race has now become an otaku. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, Rog himself wouldn't have believed it. What surprised him even more was that the number of games in Xiao Hei's house was even more than his personal collection. Because of interstellar trade, both the Kree Empire and Xander have trade caravans from Konoha. These caravans not only brought back a lot of specialties from the Kree Empire and Xander, but they also brought back a lot of technological products. For example, Xiao Hei was currently using the latest gaming helmet from the Kree Empire. Rog looked at Little Black's console model and helplessly discovered that the Kree gaming helmet he was currently using was actually 2 generations behind. Rog, your gaming skills aren't good enough. With your standard, you won't even make it into the top 1,000 in the entire server. In a multiplayer game similar to PUBG, Rog and Xiao Hei formed a 2-person team. Then, he was crushed. What do you mean my level is not good enough? It's the other side who cheated, okay? He's running even faster than the floating car. That guy is definitely cheating. After taking off the gaming helmet, Rog explained. In esports, being a noob is the original sin. Xiao Hei didn't argue with Rog. Instead, he silently said something that was enough to break Rog's defense. Looking at Xiao Hei's mouth full of sharp teeth, Rog sighed helplessly. In this day and age, even weapons dared to laugh at their master's noob. Times have really changed. Again, I don't believe that I can't get the championship trophy today. After saying that, Rog took the lead and put on the gaming helmet. Reality proved that being a noob was the original sin in esports. When Rog played single-player fighting games, he was definitely a first-rate player. However, once he entered a multiplayer competitive game like this, he, who was used to fighting alone, was quickly beaten to a pulp by the opposing team. In the end, after fighting for a few hours in Xiao Hei's house, he still didn't get the championship trophy. Before leaving, he asked Xiao Hei, who was addicted to the game, "Do you regret becoming my weapon?" He thought Xiao Hei would give him a touching answer. As a result, Xiao Hei didn't say anything and threw the gaming helmet he just used to him. "Don't think about this nonsense all day, practice more when you have time. If you can't find a suitable weapon in a fight, you can come to me at any time." After that, Xiao Hei put on the gaming helmet again and started a new game. Looking at Xiao Hei lying on the sofa with a helmet on, Rog didn't say anything else and left Xiao Hei's house for the next destination. Punisher, Abomination, Red Tank, Dr. Connors, Daisy, Moonstone, Quicksilver, Walter, except for Venom, who still stayed with Eddie on Earth, Rog spent the afternoon visiting each of them. Although they all had their own jobs now, he had a reasonable reason that no one could find a problem with. The 4th Hokage inspected the various jobs in the village. After enjoying a dinner made by Walter at his house, Rog returned to the Hokage's mansion. He spent a day specifically to understand the current lives of others. After confirming that everyone was doing well, he felt a lot more at ease. At least, he didn't let these people who followed him have a bad life. In the following days, he began the boring life of cultivation again. To be precise, it can't be said to be cultivation. It should be to thoroughly adapt to his body after being strengthened by the chakra fruit. While adapting to his body, he also digested Njord's God King's authority. He didn't accept Njord's authority in the ocean and storm domain, but used the energy in it to temper his body little by little. At the same time, he began to learn how to control universal energy. If he wants to go further in the Divine Father level, universal energy is a hurdle that can't be bypassed. Only by learning how to control these universal energy can it be possible to break through the limits of the Divine Father level and advance to a higher level. The system can't provide him with any help in this regard. However, the silver surfboard makes up for his shortcomings in this regard. To some extent, the silver surfboard is a solidified and self-charging universal energy entity. By studying the silver surfboard, he can find a way to control and use universal energy. However, this obviously isn't an easy thing to do. When he began to study universal energy, Hinata also resumed her research on the Sharingan ninjutsu. Although Hinata didn't put all her energy into research, she didn't stop the relevant research either. Time passed little by little, and unknowingly, 3 months have passed. In these 3 months, Rog thoroughly adapted to his strengthened body and learned a way to use universal energy from the silver surfboard. In order to understand more about universal energy that can't be classified by attributes and properties, he also went to Asgard and stayed in Asgard's royal library for more than half a month. As a long-established universal civilization, Asgard's research on universal energy is not in the minority. It's just that because of tradition and his physique, Asgard didn't study universal energy as a main force. Compared to the energy of the universe, Asgard's research was mostly about the divine power. But even so, Asgard's information has helped Rog a lot. Coupled with the copy of the book collection that he had obtained from the Vanir gods, it only took him 3 months to upgrade himself from a novice in the field of cosmic energy to a slightly knowledgeable researcher. However, research is research, the specific application is obviously not so simple. After 3 months of trial and error, he had only grasped some of the basic methods of using it. For example, relying only on his physical body to survive in outer space, and using universal energy to restore his physical strength and energy, etc. In addition to him, in the past 3 months, Hinata's research has also gained a lot. Although the number is not a lot, Hinata has successfully developed 3 Sharingan ninjutsu, 80 God's Airstrike, Expanding Truth-Seeking Ball, and Killing the Grey Bone. As for Infinite Tsukuyumi, Heaven's Defense, and Yomuri, she hasn't been able to study them yet, but she has a general idea. It has to be said that Hinata's talent in ninjutsu research and development is really amazing. When she put the complete information of the 80 Gods Airstrike, Expanding Truth-Seeking Ball, and Killing Grey Bones in front of Roger, Roger once again doubted who was the real transmigrator. Compared with Hinata, he, the real transmigrator, is not an ordinary scum. Although he was a little surprised that Hinata actually developed these 3 ninjutsu, he still happily accepted the information and devoted himself to cultivation. No one will dislike their own strength. This is the same as no one on earth will dislike their own money. Saying that I have no interest in money is just a matter of listening to it. If anyone really believes it, then there is a real problem with their IQ. Rog, who originally planned to give himself a small vacation, began to cultivate again. But this time, he didn't cultivate universal energy or his body, but the 3 ninjutsu that require Sharingan. 1 week later. For Konoha's hidden village, this day is no different from the past. But just after noon, Konoha's security team received a very flamboyant invasion signal. In the outer space of Tatooine, a very famous giant spaceship appeared. Behind this giant spaceship, there is a fleet that is enough to start a planetary war. Temple number 2. At this time, the giant spaceship that came to the outer space of Tatooine was the flagship of Thanos' Tyrant, Temple number 2. Rog, who was practicing ninjutsu in the training room, received a report from number 2. However, he didn't immediately go to the Hokage's office, but returned to the mansion to take a bath. Then, he changed into clean clothes and put on the Haori of the 4th Hokage, and the Flying Thunder God came to the Hokage's office. When he came to the office, the Punishers and others who hold important positions in Konoha were already there, silently waiting for his arrival. Rog glanced at the Punishers, motioned them to sit down, and then said to Number 2, "Number 2, tell me the current situation." Temple Number 2 is approaching the planet at full speed, and is expected to arrive in 10 minutes. It has been confirmed that it is Thanos Tyrant's Temple Number 2, and the fleet behind it is Thanos Tyrant's Vanguard Guard Corps. The other party is maintaining silence and has not responded to any messages. Number 2 quickly reported the current situation, and projected the fleet behind Number 2 Temple. Regarding the sudden arrival of Temple Number 2, the Punishers and others were not surprised. Although not many people knew about the battle between Rog and Thanos Tyrant on Titan, the battle between him and Thanos Tyrant on planet Haza of the Carey Empire was actively publicized by the Carey Empire. Now, the entire universe was spreading rumors that he was not on good terms with Thanos Tyrant. The content of the rumors mainly focused on two aspects. The first was that he stole Thanos Tyrant's power gem. The second was that he stole Thanos Tyrant's daughter, Gamora. Yes, that's right, except for the Punishers, Gila, Supreme Wisdom, and a few other people who knew about it, the entire universe thought that he stole Gamora. In fact, after sending Gamora to Titan Star, he had never seen her again. Not to mention Gamora, he had not even seen the Milky Way awkward dance troupe for a long time. Of course, he didn't specifically explain anything. What other people like to think is their business, and he can't control other people's thoughts. And from the general gossip mentality, people are more willing to believe that he stole Gamora. Even if this thing seems a bit unreasonable, it doesn't affect the spread of this message. What do you think? Looking at Temple Number 2 projected by Number 2, Rog said to the Punishers and others. Judging from the current situation, it does look like Thanos Tyrant is leading a fleet to attack Konoha. But Rog feels that things are not that simple. Although Thanos Tyrant is not a good person, he is a very trustworthy person. There are still more than 2 months before their agreed date of the decisive battle. Even if Thanos Tyrant really wants to attack Konoha, now is not the time. There is only one situation that will make Thanos Tyrant make this decision. That is, he thinks that Rog is dead. Only in this way will he be able to lead the fleet to attack Konoha before the agreed time is up, and before the battle with Rog is over, the outcome will be decided. The other party is coming with bad intentions. I suggest that we fight Thanos Tyrant's fleet in outer space to avoid damage to the village as much as possible. After more than 10 seconds of silence, the Punishers took the lead and said. His suggestion was approved by Abomination, Red Tank, and others. I don't think the other party is going to attack Konoha. If they really want to attack Konoha, they won't just fly at this speed. This is completely to give Konoha enough time to prepare. Daisy also expressed her opinion. When Daisy expressed her opinion, the office once again fell into a silent atmosphere. The entire army enters level 1 alert, wait for my order to set off at any time. I'll go and meet Thanos Tyrant first. Chapter 653. After that, Rog's body shone with a brilliant aurora-like light. Quantum transmission. The next second, his figure disappeared in front of the Punisher and others and appeared above Konoha's hidden village. Just as he was about to fall under the influence of gravity, the silver surfboard flew out from Konoha's hidden village and quickly came to his feet. Rog now has mastered a lot of flying abilities. Whether it is using ninjutsu or magic, he can fly at will. But the most suitable one for him now is the silver surfboard that originally belonged to the Silver Shadowman. The silver surfboard can take the Silver Shadowman across the universe. Whether it is speed or reliability, there is no need to worry. Rog, standing on the silver surfboard, drew an arc in the air and flew toward the Temple 2 in outer space. After entering the atmosphere, a golden chakra emerged from his body. Although he can now use cosmic energy to cross the universe, the visual effects are still necessary. That's right, the golden chakra released by him now is purely to add some visual effects to himself. When he just flew out of Tatooine's atmosphere, the explorers on the Temple 2 sensed his existence, and the muzzles on the spacecraft pointed in his direction. But until he reached the second temple, these cannons didn't fire a single cannonball or energy beam. Looking at the hill-like Temple 2 in front of him, Rog did not speak. His current body can directly adapt to the vacuum environment and cosmic radiation, but this does not mean that he can transmit his voice in the airless space. Thanos, I'm coming. In the end, he chose to use magic to solve this problem. He directly transmitted his words to the mind of every creature in the Temple 2 through spiritual magic. Not long after he finished speaking, the Temple 2 opened the entrance passage under the hull. When the Temple 2 took the initiative to open the passage, Rog did not hesitate and flew directly into the passage. A few minutes later, he came to the main control room of the Temple 2 on the silver surfboard. General Deathblade, Nebula, Ebony Throat, Supergiant, Black Dwarf, Thanos Overlord's 5 strongest underlings, the 5 Black Radiant Generals, were all in the main control room. In addition to the Dark 5 generals, he also saw another adopted daughter of Thanos, Gamera's sister, Nebula. Where is Thanos? Although he was alone and in the second temple, he did not show the slightest fear. On the surface, it looked like he was trapped in the enemy camp. But in reality, even if the 5 generals of Black Radiance, Nebula, and the others worked together, they were still no match for him. Master is waiting for you on Titan Star. Ebony Throat, who had the ability to teleport objects and acted as the brains of the 5 generals of Black Radiance, stepped forward and spoke in a neither servile nor overbearing manner. Was it your idea to lead the army to Tatooine, or was it Thanos' idea? Rog asked coldly as he looked at the Ebony Throat in front of him, which did not conform to the aesthetic standards of the people on Earth at all. The army was pressing down on the border, and they were still maintaining a state of silence. No matter who saw it, this was a blatant provocation of force. It's Master's will. Ebony Throat continued. Explain it, or I don't mind having a warm-up battle before going to Titan Star. Only Rog dared to say such words at this time. Even Ronan, the controller, or Nova Supreme, in the Second Temple, did not dare to be so arrogant in front of the 5 generals of Black Radiance. Master said that if you win, the entire fleet will be yours, and we will also become your subordinates. If you lose, Master wants your Konoha hidden village. Ebony Throat said calmly, not caring about the fact that Thanos took them as a bet. Interesting, this is to add some stakes to the duel. Rog smiled and shook his head, then said to Ebony Throat and the others, I accept this bet. But you can't continue to move forward, otherwise, I will let Konoha's fleet destroy you directly. In addition, I will give you a small suggestion. You can now call me Master in advance. After that, Rog left the main control room without looking back. At the same time, he took out the communicator on his body and issued a new order to Konoha's troops. The content of the order was very simple, that is, if Thanos' fleet continues to move forward, don't hold back and destroy it directly. After doing all this, he opened the portal to Titan Star. As his right hand drew a circle, the portal shining with golden sparks appeared in front of him. On the other side of the portal was the battlefield where he fought with Thanos. To be precise, it was the area where he killed Thanos. After coming out of the portal, he saw the fully armed Thanos. As soon as the portal was formed, Rog knew that Thanos had gotten rid of the state of Edo Tensei. Sure enough, when he came out of the portal, he saw the living Thanos. The huge double-edged sword was inserted in the ground, he was wearing a full set of armor, and the helmet was hanging casually on the sword. Slayer Overlord, who had been completely revived, sat on the broken stone pillar with a golden blade. You came early. After passing through the portal, Rog walked down from the surfboard and asked Thanos. I can only maintain this state for a week, and I can't come at the agreed time. Thanos was still sitting on the stone pillar and answered calmly. You actually found death, not bad. There are not many people in the universe who can resurrect Thanos perfectly. Among them, the most likely one to help Thanos is Death, one of the 5 gods of creation. This is one of the reasons why Rog asked Thanos to find Death. I found it, but it's a little different from what I imagined. After that, Thanos stood up, took the helmet off the double-edged sword, and solemnly put it on. When he pulled out the double-edged sword inserted in the ground, he said something that Rog didn't expect. She is also very interested in you and made a deal with me. What deal? If I kill you, she will resurrect me completely. Although he said that he wanted to kill himself, Rog didn't feel any killing intent from him. So that's how it is. Then let me see how strong you are after making a deal with death. As soon as his voice fell, the chakra on Rog's body surged wildly. QB mode. In an instant, his whole body became like a golden light, and the Haori on his body also became a form of energy. Black magatama and spiral patterns also appeared on his chest and shoulders. After reaching a complete agreement with with 9 luminaries, he could already perform the perfect QB mode smoothly. When Rog entered the QB mode, Thanos did not hesitate and directly waved the double-edged sword towards him. Super Jade Rasengan. Facing Thanos, who was like a cannonball, Rog raised his hand and released a Super Jade Rasengan. Because chakra has become a golden chakra, the Super Jade Rasengan he used at this time was like a golden sun that hit Thanos. Boom! The double-edged sword and the Super Jade Rasengan collided fiercely. A terrifying explosion rang out. As soon as the blast of the explosion rose, Rog and Thanos launched the second wave of attacks. For others, the power of this explosion may be life-threatening. But for them, this explosion didn't even have the qualifications to make them shake their bodies. Clang, clang, clang. While launching the second wave of attacks, Rog summoned the Kusanagi sword and competed with Thanos by swordsmanship and close combat. Although the double-edged sword was amazing in size, in the hands of Thanos, the double-edged sword seemed to have no weight, and it was flexible as if it violated the laws of physics. However, Rog, who was waving the Kusanagi sword, was not bad either. If Thanos' fighting style was a wild fighting style, then Rog's fighting style was a perfect combination of skills and speed. Although the fighting styles of the two were different. However, relying on their powerful bodies, they fought a dazzling battle. In the process of fighting, Rog found that Thanos' already terrifying body, after experiencing death and resurrection, had a surprising change. The previous Thanos, more or less, had some shortcomings in speed and flexibility. But now, he was a hexagonal warrior with full attributes. The size of his body did not affect his movements and agility. If he didn't eat the chakra fruit, Rog really didn't have much confidence to compete with Thanos in close combat. In close combat, the most important thing was not the fighting technique, but the quality of one's body. If you don't have enough physical fitness, even if you have good skills, you will be knocked down by a punch. With the strengthening of the chakra fruit and the QB mode, Rog's physical fitness was not worse than Thanos, and it was even stronger. However, Thanos was not an easy person to deal with. Although he didn't expect Rog's physical fitness to be improved to this point, he keenly discovered that Rog had taken a critical step and reached the Heavenly Father level. After being aware of this, Thanos no longer held back. He waved his double-edged sword and shouted. Boom! Under Thanos' powerful slash, Rog was forced to take a few steps back. Then, he found that Thanos was different. Heavenly Father level. Thanos actually entered the Heavenly Father level. When they fought just now, he was very sure that Thanos was not a Heavenly Father level. But now, Thanos showed an unquestionable Heavenly Father level aura. Breakthrough in battle? No, this is impossible. Although in some novels, there is no lack of cases of breakthrough in battle. But this kind of thing, in reality, is basically unlikely to happen. Promotion from one level to another is not as simple as eating and drinking. Even Rog himself took a few months to get used to his new power after his breakthrough. If someone really did break through in the middle of a battle, then the most likely outcome was that the lucky person would die in the hands of the enemy because he or she was unable to control the sudden increase in power in his or her body. Fighting seems to be a barbaric technique, but in fact, it is a very scientific technique. The strength, speed, angle, frequency of the attack, if you can't perfectly control your power, let alone killing the enemy, even whether you can survive is a problem. You've changed, you actually learned to hold back in battle. After being forced to retreat, Rog did not continue to attack Thanos and said to Thanos, who was already a Heavenly Father level. As long as you can win, the means are not important. Slayer Lord answered calmly. In the past, he really disdained to play these means, but after fighting with Rog once, his mentality has undergone some subtle changes. He didn't use means before because he had the strength to crush the enemy. But now it's different. Rog is not an existence that can be crushed by him. Under such circumstances, it's not incomprehensible for him to use some tactics of pretending to be a pig to eat a tiger. Since you've already shown your trump card, then I'll show mine too. After saying that, Rog inserted the Kusanagi sword in his hand into the ground obliquely, and put on a bare-handed fighting posture. 80 Gods Air Strike. Shaking the sky with a mortal Dao, attacking and defending in one, a merciless fist. Under the gaze of Thanos, a golden chakra appeared in Rog's palm. In the next second, countless fists formed by the ultimate chakra emerged in an instant, and attacked Thanos like a meteor shower. Boom! 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 Compared with the fist of Top Buddha, the fist of 80 Gods Airstrike did not have the kind of earth-shattering shock. But in terms of power, the power of 80 Gods Airstrike was no worse than Top Buddha. Compared with Top Buddha, where the number of fists was limited, 80 Gods Airstrike could be released continuously as long as there was enough chakra. In the face of these endless chakra fists, Thanos did not dodge, nor did he retreat. Like an invincible general who did not retreat in the face of the charge of thousands of troops, he stood in place and waved the double-edged sword in his hand. He wanted to resist Rog's 80 Gods Airstrike. After the last battle, Thanos had determined that his energy attack was far inferior to Rog. In that case, he would use his best method to fight against Rog. 80 Gods Airstrike continued to attack Thanos. Thanos also fought with the double-edged sword in his hand, trying his best to resist the 80 Gods Airstrike. Although the power of 80 Gods Airstrike was earth-shattering, Thanos at this time was still a Heavenly Father level. Although the resistance was a bit difficult, Thanos finally blocked all the chakra fists. As the price, the double-edged sword in his hand and the armor on his body were completely shattered by the 80 Gods Airstrike. You are very, after resisting Rog's 80 Gods Airstrike, Thanos was just about to say something when he saw Rog's right hand raised high. A huge black ball like a black hole appeared in his hand. Inflated truth-seeking jade. Rog was not interested in explaining to Thanos what the inflated truth-seeking jade was. After this huge truth-seeking jade was formed, he did not hesitate. His legs suddenly exerted force and directly attacked Thanos. It could obliterate all properties, turn the world into nothingness, and it was also the starting point of a new space. The inflated truth-seeking jade could devour all types of energy and hide the power to turn the world into nothingness. In terms of power, the inflated truth-seeking jade was his strongest single-target attack skill. Even the Bijadama launched by the complete-tailed beast form could not be compared with the inflated truth-seeking jade. Rog did not intend to let the decisive battle become a protracted battle. From the moment he entered the nine-tailed mode, he was ready to end the battle quickly. And this inflated truth-seeking jade was the final killing move he prepared for this battle. Looking at the inflated truth-seeking jade getting closer and closer to him, Thanos still had no intention of retreating. Since he started fighting, he had never taken a step back. Not in the past, and not now either. When the inflated truth-seeking jade came in front of him, Thanos clenched his right fist and threw the strongest punch in his life. Boom! When everything returned to calm, Rog removed the nine-tailed mode and came to the huge pit that seemed to go straight to hell. He won, and there was no suspense. Although Thanos threw the strongest punch at the last moment, in front of the inflated truth-seeking jade, the outcome would not change. After standing in front of this huge pit and staring at it for a few minutes, he opened the portal back to Konoha's hidden village. Although Thanos died under the inflated truth-seeking jade, he didn't know why, but he always had a hunch that he would see this guy with the title of Crazy Titan in the future. Forget it, don't think about it. Let's talk about the future later. After summoning back the silver surfboard that only played the role of transportation, he looked back at the Titan star that was gradually dying. Then, without looking back, he walked into the portal and returned to Konoha's hidden village. You're tuning in to the Carefree Valley YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.